It's always a great joy for me to share our experience, our work experience, the things that we do every day, both with young people, students within schools or in specialist trade schools, but also with managers, entrepreneurs. So I can see both sides, if you like. And I have the difficult choice of selecting young people, but also I see the difficulty of young people to find jobs. And listening to the people who took the floor before me, I was confirmed in what I really believe in very deeply. In other words, that young people very often need to be guided, helped to find a job, because they've got to get out of that so-called dichotomy between a sort of passive resignation, in other words, the job will fall into my lap, but also a certain presumption whereby they think that new specialization, in fact, is sufficient. They have a master's, they have a university degree, and so on, so that's it. So I think now we have to adopt an approach where the key words are, on the one hand, accountability, responsibility, but then also awareness. I'm concerned in the commercial world with a specific aspect which we have called ethical sales or ethical selling. In other words, we believe that you can have a virtuous circle between a company and its market, and we apply this ethical value to young people when they're looking for a job. It's a sort of ethical approach on the part of the young people when he or she comes to sell his expertise or his ability. Because one thing is the ability that a young person has, human capacity, technical capacity, that he or she makes available and puts to the service of a company. And young people don't have very often this idea of taking responsibility for their own activities, and sometimes they aren't aware of this. They say, okay, I've studied, I've done this, but I did it with the idea of getting a degree. But we have to ask them, did you get this degree to follow a dream, to actually make available these capabilities to a company, to a multinational, to an entrepreneur? So that's very often a question I ask the young people. And I said, would you employ yourself? Would you recruit yourself? I mean, what have you got to offer the company that you are applying to work for? I mean, what value do you offer? And this, from a point of view, is something that we have to underline. And also finding the manager, the entrepreneur, who is asked to take on a young person. That person is thinking about the values of his or her company. And Andrea talked about the values that you pursue with your activities. And I think it's right on the part of the entrepreneur to share these values so that the young person can say, yes, I choose responsibility with a sense of responsibility to make myself available, to make my services available to this company that has these values. But young people have to be helped in this approach. So it's an ethical approach to selling to the commercial field. It almost seems an oxymoron. In fact, when 4 years ago we went to the States to talk about sales ethics, which is this idea that we have, the first professors that dialogued with us on this theme said to us, well, you know, this is an oxymoron. It's a contradiction in terms, because very often the word sales or selling is linked to the idea of a certain prejudice. You know, you in some way are trying to get round and cheat your customer. We rather think that you can have an exchange which is respectful and efficacious at the same time. So selling and sales is not something I give you something and you give me money, but an exchange rather of value. And this exchange of value also takes place when I, a young person, make myself available to a company who will pay me for my work, of course. Another thing that struck me when I was listening to my colleagues was this idea of the entrepreneurial approach that young people have. I really do believe that Italy has a lot to give in this sense. And therefore, what we need is not only to help young people to develop their entrepreneurial spirit, but also we have to have people to help them, to finance them, to push them. Because over and above any passion and enthusiasm that a young person might have, you have to have money, you have to have tools to be able to realize your dream. And Italy certainly needs to develop a more Anglo-Saxon American type of entrepreneurial culture that gives support to people who've got ideas, projects, because we do have an area and a land which is full of resources.